Oncilla. Felidae called the attention of everyone in their cathedral's makeshift basement tavern. Fearfully, Oncilla waited for the guild's regional leader to call her and Caracal out for their failure to assassinate Petal. After sparing the demonist, they had lied to Felidae, claiming their client had provided a dead lead. At the time, Oncilla had believed they had been lucky, for no one else had found any of the other demonists from the list either. Why else would Felidae gather us together like this? Somehow she must have discovered the truth. We're set to be disciplined for certain. Friends, Felidae sneered. Oncilla clenched the folds of her walking skirts to keep her hands from shaking. The Southern Guild has written to us. They succeeded in eliminating the entire crusade party. For a moment, Oncilla experienced relief, until she fully processed Felidae's words. That's unbelievable. Oncilla tried to not look horrified as everyone around the wooden tables exchanged questioning looks. How? A brave soul wagered to ask. They poisoned their water. How are they getting compensated? Is our backer gifting them an entire city in exchange for 10,000 heads? Caracal asked. Felidae scoffed. They're only getting paid for the heads they collected before the Imperial army arrived and chased them off. Still, that must be several hundred. There were only several dozen collected. In outrage, Caracal stood and faced their leader. The Southeastern chapter only wants to keep the gem for themselves. They're lying. It is suspicious. They claimed Lynx was imprisoned. Poor soul. Oncilla sent a piteous glance to his fellow footpads. No! Irremote cried out. Codcod grasped Irremote to console her. Did Margay make it? He wasn't mentioned. I'm guessing he was killed. At least, they'll claim he was, even if they did it themselves. Caracal's mouth fell open. This needs to be reviewed by Credo. Who do you think the letter was from? What's the guild leader doing with them? Caracal blanched. He was the one to organize the attack once the plan took shape. He claimed they were betrayed. I thought only those in attendance knew the plan. I don't know how it leaked. So he leaves us with no gem and no grounds to stand on to challenge him. Caracal, careful. It doesn't matter if Credo's screwing us. We just need to keep our heads down long enough to get out of here. Oncilla tried to subtly tell Caracal to calm down, but failed to catch her attention. Precisely. Perhaps if more of us had attended, it would have been more difficult for him to erase our claim to our share of the reward. Felidae approached the pair of them, like a predator on the prowl. You're blaming us for Credo being a prick? Caracal slammed a fist on the wooden table. I'm blaming you for not partaking when called. If perhaps you had found success in your last mission, we might be in a different situation. We might have moved into the city. You acknowledge yourself that our contact must have provided us faulty information on the demon worshippers. How could we have succeeded? We can always earn the gem later. Besides, the burden of responsibility for moving the entire Northern Guild should not rest on Oncilla's and my shoulders alone. Everyone is accountable. Caracal was not taking the accusation well. Felidae crossed her arms. She wasn't taking the challenge well. We can earn more gem, lass, Codcod said to diffuse the tension. We've waited this long. We can wait longer yet. We've been instructed not to make a show of wealth. That would include buying a place large enough to relocate us to any of the northern cities. The monarchs will be on guard, looking for such purchases. If there is a hint of an oddity, we could betray our identity. Oncilla's heart would have sunk if she hadn't had the planned rendezvous with Caracal and Petal to feed her hope. I believe Petal will lead us to a better option. There's no other choice. How long should we wait? Panthera, one of the finders, asked. I don't know. It will be some time, and it is unfortunate we could not have bought the place prior to the Crusade's massacre. Given the timelines, we wouldn't have made it to the capital, or any other city, before the other chapters struck, even if Caracal and Oncilla had been successful in assassinating that demon worshipper, another guild member called. It might have been for the best. Oncilla doubted Felidae wanted to hear that. She probably viewed the chapter's situation as entirely Caracal's fault. Felidae's demeanor changed. We'll get the gem one way or another. Her gaze panned to Caracal before she retreated into her office. The evening Oncilla and Caracal were scheduled to leave, Oncilla sent thanks to the archangel Buya that Caracal hadn't formally challenged Felidae. Oncilla hadn't thought Caracal would, but she wanted to express her undying gratitude that their plan hadn't become unhinged. Tensions around the cathedral had been as taut as a canvas stretched too tightly over its wooden border. With the slightest pressure from a sharp edge, a massive tear would split it. Oncilla didn't want to imagine how their thin canvas slice would measure against Felidae's in the resulting fallout. Who would support us? The footpads? The finders? Would anyone? Let's mark our last meal as part of a special occasion. Caracal turned toward the kitchens, rather than the basement tavern. How? Follow me. Caracal waited at the kitchen door, listening. I wonder who's on cooking duty tonight. Oncilla didn't have a view from where she hid. After the cook's footsteps retreated to a back corner, Caracal glided into the kitchen. She returned a heartbeat later with a mischievous grin and the salts and herbs from the cupboard. The seasonings disappeared into the folds of her clothes. They hurried into the basement tavern's dining area and requested their evening portions before anyone noticed the missing ingredients. Without arousing suspicion, Caracal reached into a fold and sprinkled a few little leaves over each dish. She made another few passes before she was satisfied. Their final meal in the wretched cathedral was the first decent serving either of them had had since Felidae released the finders from chef duty. Had the dried spices not been sitting in the dusty pantry for rotations, the food would have been delectable. They finished as Felidae approached. Oncilla felt small before the enraged chapter lead's heavy footfalls and accusatory gaze. Felidae didn't bother to address Oncilla. Did you take the seasonings? She looked at the plates. Caracal flipped hers over so Felidae couldn't see the dregs of parsley and colored salts. Oncilla followed suit. Felidae grabbed both plates to examine them. Oncilla's heart started to pound in fear of getting caught and subsequently reprimanded. Caracal left, and Oncilla eagerly followed. Felidae did not call after them. I think she's too stunned by our behavior to chastise us. Don't look back, Caracal whispered. Without allowing herself to relax, Oncilla said, I'm not going to. Serval entered through the door to the basement and blocked their path. Unaware of the situation, he shuffled to swap places with them and beelined toward Felidae. He had just returned from a finding expedition and likely had news to update their regional leader. His interruption might buy us the time we need. How long do you think it will take to work? Caracal asked as they hurried toward their rooms. Huh? The words of Dantrima. We flipped our plates over and Felidae collected them. That's all it's supposed to take. Oncilla understood Caracal's motivation for the extra excursion. Their original plan had been to abandon their plates in the basement tavern. Someone would have to move them eventually. They had hoped any random member of the guild removing the plates would suffice, but having Felidae take them probably improved the chances it would work. I don't know. Hopefully soon? I can't imagine that trick will lend us much time. I guess Felidae is collecting her daggers now. You've already packed, right? We might leave before she challenges you. I have a few items left, but mostly yes. Oncilla grabbed her filled water skin and pack stuffed with fine clothing and a set of warm furs. They still hadn't decided where to relocate permanently, so she brought as many styles as she could. On a final check, her long, dirk-like sewing scissors had fallen behind her storage chest. She had bundled all her other sharp objects safely inside her pack, and she cursed herself for forgetting them when she had wrapped up her knitting needles. It should have been obvious they were missing then. She stuck the scissors in her boot to prevent damage to any of her expensive garments and left. She rapped on Caracal's door. It swung open with the slightest pressure. Ripped sheets encircled Caracal's cot. Feather and fiber stuffing littered Caracal's half of the room and drifted into eerie emotes. Oncilla retreated a step backward in self-preservation. Did Felidae already come for Caracal? Am I too late? I knew I never should have prayed to that damn angel. What happened? Caracal poked her head out from under the bed a moment later. She looked distraught. I can't find Sorrel's locket. I put it back under my cot as soon as we returned. Where could it have gone? Oncilla joined Caracal in searching for it, shaking her torn sheets and rifling through her remaining unpacked belongings. You were terribly drunk that night. Maybe you misplaced it. Have you seen it since? No, but I know I returned it. I had sobered up by then. I know I did. Did you pack it already? Oncilla placed a hand on her bulging leather sack. Her pack is as large as a child. The necklace could easily be in there. Caracal didn't turn. No, I had planned on packing it today, and I know I didn't put it in there. Okay, Uncilla worried how much time they'd have before Dantrima's words would take effect, and how much time they had until Felidae confronted Caracal, but she knew how much the trinket meant to her friend. If they didn't find it now, Caracal might never see it again. Oncilla withdrew her scissors to pry up a floorboard. With the head positioned between the scissor blades, the first nail slid up steadily. Caracal sent her a curious glance. If you're sure you returned it under your bed, then the only place it could have gone is down, right? Oncilla tilted her head into a shrug and pulled out the nail. My. Felidae entered the room, which was now crowded with all three women and the mess. Her flamberge rapier conspicuously bulged in a rippling pattern along her trouser's side. She never carried it on her. What is this? Oncilla froze. She knows. You. Caracal narrowed her eyes and stopped searching. Where's my locket? No, Caracal, don't. A smile slid across Felidae's face. You don't have a locket. Everything within the cathedral belongs to the guild. Caracal withdrew her twin serrated daggers and raised one to eye level. Where is it? Felidae eyed the deep-toothed blade. I can have you slain for this. You were already planning on doing it anyway. Might as well be on my own terms. Their leader smirked. If it weren't so profitable to have you around, you're right. I would have. Now that half the footpads are gone, you're really going to need me. After our last job, we have a slew of fresh assassins growing in our ranks. So no, I don't need you any longer. If you want to take on any more expensive jobs and have them done right, you do. If you ever want to get out of here, you do. Actually, we have the gem now to purchase a small place. We can gradually start moving in to avoid detection. So, again, I don't need you any longer. Felidae withdrew her undulating sword. But I'll have you know, Serval's final pawning of a golden locket pushed our funds over the edge. Bitch! Caracal lunged at Felidae. Felidae jumped backward into the cathedral's open courtyard. She twirled her rapier to taunt Caracal. Oncilla debated between aiding Caracal's fight and creating an escape plan. Caracal's pack had been left in her room, so Oncilla dragged it out for easier access. When she entered the courtyard, some of the other guild members watched the fight. If I join Caracal, they might feel compelled to defend Felidae. It'll be better to stay out of it. Just beyond the courtyard, the hag lingered. Why is she here? Perhaps I can steal her cart and get a head start. Caracal's faster than I am. She would be able to catch up, and she knows the way. At the sound of metal clanging, more from the guild stirred from their rooms and rose from the basement. They threw jibes, and some gambled on the winner. Soon everyone present in the northern headquarters watched the match. Caracal parried Felidae's sword with each swing she took. The chapter leader handled her blade poorly. It seemed too heavy for her. She was certainly out of practice with it, if she had ever been in practice. Caracal was lethal, but she had to be careful about Felidae's extended reach. She nicked at Felidae's sword arm, and occasionally her forward-facing leg, but she wasn't quite fast enough to deal a more severe blow. With each injury, Felidae flinched for just a moment, but swung her blade again shortly after. Given Caracal's wrath over Felidae selling her daughter's locket, Oncilla assumed she would end her quickly. Perhaps she intends to bleed her out in revenge. Despite her disadvantage, Caracal advanced, jabbing one knife forward while deflecting with the other. It spooked Felidae. She dodged wooden scaffolding as she backed into it, but the distraction penalized her. She detected Caracal's dagger late and blocked it at a poor angle for her wrist, yielding weak leverage. Caracal caught the middle of the rippling blade in one of her knive's deep serrations and pulled it out with full control. She forced the edge into a leg of the scaffolding, snapped her knife upward, and the tooth gripping the sword broke it in half. Caracal slashed at the chapter leader while Felidae wriggled the half-sword free from the wood. Long, welling gashes sliced down Felidae's face, not unlike Lynx's. She abandoned her sword, and Caracal moved in, expecting Felidae to flee. Caracal stabbed at Felidae's flailing elbow and drew blood along her triceps. Felidae yowled, but withdrew another blade. When she regained her bearings, she hacked it around wildly with the arm that wasn't trailing a river of blood. Caracal slowed her advance. She had only just dealt her first serious injury, and Oncilla assumed she strategized during the reprieve. Her plan probably had hinged on disarming Felidae, but she'd be a fool to think the regional leader would only have one weapon on her. Everyone in the guild had at least 3, including Oncilla, although hers were more unconventional than the others. Caracal and Felidae circled each other, drawing closer and closer to the courtyard's mosaic fountain. Caracal jumped atop the fountain's short ledge. I'm not going to ask you again, where's my daughter's locket? I told you already. It's been sold. Which town? Can't say. From the crowd of spectators, Serval withdrew. I could chase him down, but what would I even do if I could catch him? Besides, I'm reluctant to set our supplies down if we need to escape quickly. The only fate worse than being trapped here is surviving in the desert without water, or a city without means to eat. Caracal will just have to forgive me for letting him go. Felidae joined Caracal on the fountain's low wall. She prowled toward Caracal, dripping blood as she went. She lunged with her shorter blade, and the silver blazed on both sides from each of the low suns. It was such a pure silver that the fountain water lit like a bright crescent moon, blinding the onlookers as the blade darted and danced in the rhythm with Felidae's strikes. When Felidae noticed the effect, she tried to blind Caracal with the reflections. Felidae couldn't achieve the correct angle with the time she had between blocking. Her body reverberated any time Caracal unleashed another hammering blow against her, and she struggled to recover. Quivering, Felidae hastened her attacks, as though she finally appreciated the threat of death encircling her. Like a cornered animal, she fought like she had nothing to lose. To Oncilla's surprise, the cheering from the crowd increased. Only Iriamote and Codcod watched without enthusiasm. They still lamented the loss of their closest companions, and Oncilla doubted they were ready to process an additional death, let alone witness it. Caracal took the defensive, but she still claimed shallow cuts on Felidae's forearms when an opening arose. They had nearly returned to their original position when Oncilla noticed Serval return, carrying a bow. Who was the arrow for? I can't risk him firing it. Oncilla wrapped both packs awkwardly around her back and pushed through the crowd toward him. Few grumbled about their obstructed view, but otherwise she met little resistance. Oncilla split her attention between Caracal's fight and Serval knocking an arrow on his longbow. Caracal rooted her feet well against the stone. She took one purposeful step backward after another each time Felidae swiped at her. Felidae hadn't noticed her surroundings for a second time. When she plodded forward on the slick blood-stained stone, she slipped off the fountain and crashed a short distance to the ground. In her descent, she released her blade into the air. A crunch told everyone in the courtyard that she had broken a bone. By its snap, Oncilla assumed it was her forearm. Her blade clattered against the rock a moment later. Serval raised his bow and aimed at Caracal. Oncilla grasped her sewing scissors from her boot. First, she plowed into him with the help of the pack's weight, but she still barely moved him with her small frame. If anything, she acted as a minor irritant. Move! He knocked her back with a beefy elbow. Felidae owes me gem, and Caracal isn't going to prevent me from my claim. Caracal snapped her attention toward the commotion in the crowd. Oncilla, be careful! Pay attention to Felidae! Oncilla approached again and ripped the arrow from the tenuous grip between his digits. His face registered brief shock, for in one fluid motion, she swung the shaft above the nock of the bow's upper limb and planted it squarely in his neck while skewering his heart with her scissors. Fervor blazed through Oncilla's blood. Her pulse pounded in her ears. She had never known the sensation of killing another human with her own hands. If anything, it was a responsibility that she could always diffuse away from herself. But this was unlike her jobs with Caracal. She was the only one responsible for Serval's death. His eyes rolled back in his head. Blood oozed from his neck and squirted from his chest onto her. He started to fall, and Oncilla had to choose what to let go of as she backed away from his dying form. Luckily, she chose to keep her scissors and released the arrow. Caracal gaped at her. She had leapt down from the fountain in a move to help, but Oncilla had killed Serval so fast that she had only taken a few steps before he was dead. Felidae capitalized on the opportunity. She withdrew a throwing dagger and shifted her gaze between Caracal and Oncilla. Her gaze rested on Caracal, but she hurled it toward Oncilla with pristine accuracy. I can't believe Felidae would kill me. Then again, I can't believe I just killed Serval. What mundane thoughts to be thinking right before I die. Caracal pounced in front of it. No, Caracal! Oncilla was too far to stop her. Despite Caracal's attempt, she failed to block the knife, and it continued toward Oncilla. At least I can die knowing I have the best friend I could ask for. Oncilla faced her death with acceptance. Within a moment, the dagger reached her. A scream burst out. Oncilla turned, alarmed by the noise, and waited for the pain to explode from her chest. But when she noticed the knife implanted in Panthera's torso behind her, she understood. The knife passed through Caracal as it passed through me. The others swarmed Panthera. They swallowed up the space Oncilla occupied, and the darkness inside their bodies surrounded her. Oncilla looked to Caracal. Caracal had tried to rush Felidae after she realized that she hadn't been struck by the dagger, but her blows couldn't touch the chapter leader. In frustration, Caracal screamed at the sky. She quit and paced toward Oncilla. "Where'd they go?" Irremote asked as Panthera found medicinal treatment. Oncilla took another look at herself and Caracal. They shimmered in a translucent state, apparently visible only to each other. They exchanged weary glances and attempted to embrace after they assumed they were safe, but they passed through one another as well. A semi-transparent human form of Damtrima awaited Caracal and Oncilla at the cathedral's exit. "It worked!" Caracal said as they walked to meet him. A small grin grew into a crazed smile. "I can't believe it fucking worked! For the first time, there's hope!" Oncilla flicked a concerned glance between her friend, the group they had just escaped, and the archdemon awaiting them. She didn't share Caracal's apparent enthusiasm for their circumstances, but she wouldn't voice her concerns until they were safe. Drawing from the relief she felt for escaping the Vahantry, she managed to return a half-hearted smile. "It did. Let's get out of here before this wears off." "Thank you, Damtrima," Caracal said when they joined him. She bowed her head deeply to the powerful creature. Oncilla gave a curt nod. "Yes, we are so grateful." He did not acknowledge their words. He merely led them away. When they approached the parked cart, the hag shimmered with the same translucence they did. "Look!" Oncilla attempted to nudge her friend, but passed through her again. Caracal paused, a look of horror on her face. "What is that? What monster have we been feeding those soldiers' heads to?" "We can't walk to Ferdin or sail to Gia. We're wanted in both of those kingdoms," Caracal explained to Petal in the Harper's room of the same tavern Oncilla had originally met her. "We can't stay in Sovane. The Vahantry will be looking for us." Oncilla massaged her own scalp through her wavy hair to ease the building tension headache. Caracal and Oncilla had reviewed their options repeatedly in their planning phases, and nowhere seemed like a safe escape, but they hoped Petal might offer new insight. "As you mentioned, your financier knew I was here, so I can't stay in Sovane either." Sitting on her bed, Petal traced her bony fingers against the body of her lap harp. Wild black ringlets fell over the instrument, and she brushed them away. "We can't travel through Devor without a weather mage, and I doubt we could afford one between the three of us." "You're right about that." Caracal leaned against a meager desk and slid her hands along her thighs. "Which rules out land travel to Coserai, Gia, Ikasu, and Vetron, in addition to Devor. With Devor the main Vahantry headquarters, that's even more of an absolute no. We could sail the other way, perhaps to Vetron." "Sailing from Hyeri is a lost cause, especially without a weather mage," Oncilla said. "There's one port in Summit we could try. We'd have to cross the Nasri Mountains, though," Petal said. "How would Petal scale a mountain? Wouldn't it be too dangerous?" "If we did scale the tallest peaks in the world, we would still have to sail with the water elementals and hope they didn't throw us overboard once they find out we're a bunch of demon-worshipping murderers." Caracal widened her eyes in exasperation. "Murderer. She says it so casually. There should be a separate word for someone who kills for the sake of saving a life." "I have yet to kill anyone, thank you," Petal corrected. "The acidic sands were not my invention, nor did I contribute any part of my warlass abilities to sustain it." Oncilla crossed her arms. Caracal nodded, then realized Petal couldn't see the gesture. "Right. We couldn't scale the mountains," Oncilla insisted. "Because of me?" Petal faced her with ghostly gray eyes. Oncilla flushed. "No, we'd need gear, ropes, cables. We'd spend half our gem just to get to the port, and we'd risk our necks doing it." Petal turned away and frowned. "We'll rule out the southern kingdoms then, and the western ones if we can't cross the mountains and can't travel the Ferdinese caves. I can't say that I particularly like the idea of Legel anyway." "Gross." Caracal shook her head. "Not Legel. At least we're all in agreement not to hide out in the swamplands. That might be worse than returning to that forsaken cathedral. But Body might be nice. The forest could provide a good ground cover if we need to hide from civilization for a bit." Caracal smiled. "There's plenty of food in the forest too, and it has the perk of being close," Petal agreed. "It's too close," Oncilla said. Would it be difficult for Petal to go on a long excursion? Could she manage, given her condition? Is she biased to select closer kingdoms because of that? The safest idea might be Monrighty, then. Caracal tried pacing, but failed in the small space. The eastern chapter of the Vahantry's there, Oncilla said. But there's hardly any collaboration with the eastern chapter. I doubt we'd be recognized, Caracal said. As soon as one of them notices our brands, they'd report us. We might not have any warning that we'd been discovered. Oncilla flashed the brand on the back of her non-dominant hand for effect. We'll have to cover them anywhere we go, Caracal said. What about Wojet? Petal suggested. We have plenty of emeralds from our last job, so we'd be less suspicious with conversions, Caracal said. It's also not all that far away, Oncilla reminded. Again, another choice that's too close. Maybe we could just pass through Gia for a short while, or book passage straight through to Ikusu. Or Vetron? Vetron has weather conditions we can traverse without a mage, and the crusade decimated the southwestern chapter, Caracal said. Every vessel is searched between ports, and no ship from here to Coserai bypasses Gia. Besides, with that logic, why couldn't we just pass through Ferdin? Oncilla challenged. I don't want to be the only one to risk arrest. There are the lands north of Sovane. We could sell blood for the rest of our lives to Rysic aristocrats. Petal didn't sound confident as she suggested it. We might as well relocate to Balia Island, build a lovely residence next to an elfin or a Terskay. Better yet, sail into the eternal storm raging on the other side of the planet. Oncilla took her hands from her hair and laid a dramatic hand on her sweaty forehead. Don't yell at her, we're all frustrated, Caracal scolded. Uncomfortable silence built between the friends and their new acquaintance. Why don't we get another opinion? Petal asked. What, we'll go up to a random stranger asking, Hi, can you tell us where the three of us should flee to? Oncilla asked in outrage. Keep your voice down, Caracal jolted her head forward. Between the stress at the cathedral and the stress of planning, Oncilla's mood had been bitter for days, and she turned on the defensive. I meant to ask the oracle. Petal splayed her palms up. That's so cliché, that's the first place they'll look for us, Oncilla snapped. If not the oracle, how about this? We'll go to Bavati first, and then we'll book passage to Coserai. Oncilla was beside herself. Ex-Vahantry members are going to purposefully travel to the kingdom where the Vahantry just slaughtered the High King's crusade party, and you think that's a good idea? I have contacts there who would take us in, Petal said. All three of us, inside the impenetrable castle. We wouldn't get past the defensive mages guarding the outer layer. Oncilla was sick of discussing the topic. She didn't know where to go. She just wanted the decision made and for it to be the right one. We wouldn't have to go inside the castle. My priest and his congregation have taken up residency outside of Athlia. Petal maintained an even tone. It's still a stupid idea. Oncilla couldn't care less how rude she was anymore. She had been overstressed, she hadn't slept properly, she had run out of water, and she hadn't eaten properly since they'd left the cathedral. Caracal's expression grew somber. We could separate. Perhaps the place that's best for me isn't the best for you or Petal. I can feel Caracal growing impatient with me, but she would suggest separating after what we've been through? After rotations of dreaming of running away together. I don't want to split up, Oncilla insisted. Then help generate ideas rather than rejecting all of them. Fine. Oncilla thought for a long moment, but nothing came to her. Perhaps by the time we'd arrive at Coserai, they wouldn't be looking for Vahantry members any longer. Delicately, Petal asked, Is that the plan? Caracal decided, Until we need to update it, it is.